Chinese cybercrime operation that used AI to scam hundreds of thousands of victims sued. The leverage shift starts now. Here is the signal that separates noise from actionable change. We will map trigger, incentive shift, and downstream impact before the close. Not by an AI that malfunctioned or made a mistake, by an AI that was deliberately weaponized to deceive them. Google just filed a lawsuit against a Chinese cybercrime operation that used machine learning to automate fraud at scale, and what they discovered is worth understanding because it reveals how the next wave of crime looks nothing like the last one. Here's the specifics. The operation used AI to generate voice clones and deepfakes that impersonated trusted contacts, family members, bank officials, government workers. The AI didn't just create the fake voice once and reuse it. It generated thousands of variations, each one slightly different, all targeting different victims simultaneously. A victim would get a call from what sounded exactly like their mother asking for money. The desperation in the voice was convincing because it was machine synthesized to match the emotional patterns of a real distressed person. By the time the victim realized what happened, the money was gone and the operation had already moved to the next target. The scale here is what makes this significant. We're not talking about dozens of scams or even thousands. Hundreds of thousands of victims means this operation pulled off fraud at a velocity and volume that would have been impossible 5 years ago without AI. A single human scammer can maybe run 5 conversations simultaneously. This operation ran tens of thousands. The cost to the criminals was almost nothing, just compute, not labor. The damage was catastrophic and distributed across multiple countries and continents. Google's lawsuit is the first major legal action against an AI weaponized scam ring by a tech giant. But here's what matters more than the lawsuit itself. This operation proves 3 things about AI crime in 2026. 1. The technology is mature enough to be operationalized by criminals with moderate resources. You don't need a nation-state budget. 2. The victims are not just elderly people or isolated communities. The operation targeted educated, connected people in developed economies because those victims have more money and are less likely to admit they fell for a scam. 3. Detection is lagging far behind deployment. Google didn't catch this because their safety systems flagged the scams. They caught it because of financial forensics, domain registration patterns, and old-school intelligence work. The AI itself was sophisticated enough to evade content filters. Now here's the counterpoint nobody's talking about yet. Suing a Chinese cybercrime ring is strategically important but legally almost meaningless. Enforcement against operations based in jurisdictions that don't extradite is extremely difficult. Google will likely win the case by default. The operation will rebrand, shift infrastructure, and continue. The real threat isn't this specific operation, it's the proof of concept they've established. Other criminal groups are watching. They're learning what worked, what got caught, and what to avoid next time. The templates for AI-powered scams are now in the wild. So what changes next? First, platforms will face new pressure to detect synthetic voice and deepfake calls in real time, which is technically hard and computationally expensive. Second, governments will begin requiring stronger authentication for sensitive transactions, voice calls will become less trusted for anything involving money or identity. Third, the insurance industry and financial institutions will start pricing in AI fraud risk explicitly, which will probably mean higher fees for customers in high-risk categories. Fourth, and this is important, AI safety teams at major tech companies will shift resources away from abstract alignment research toward concrete fraud detection because the business case is now clear. 4. Creators and businesses, the immediate implication is that your audience is more vulnerable to AI scams than you might think. A convincing voice clone of you could be used to sell fake courses, solicit donations, or steal credentials. For investors in AI safety and authentication, this is a clear signal that the market for fraud detection AI and biometric verification is about to expand rapidly. For regulators, this is evidence that voluntary corporate safety measures alone are insufficient and that statutory requirements for AI deployment in high-risk contexts may become inevitable. The broader pattern here is that every new capability in AI gets weaponized almost immediately. Voice synthesis, deepfakes, large language models, all of these were developed for legitimate purposes. But within months of widespread availability, criminals had built operationalized attack pipelines. This doesn't mean the technology is bad. It means that the deployment velocity of AI far exceeds the speed at which society can build defensive infrastructure. That gap is where criminals operate, and it's widening, not narrowing. Google's lawsuit is important as a legal statement. But what you should actually be monitoring is whether other platforms, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, file similar suits in the next 90 days. If they do, it signals that AI weaponized scams are systemic enough to warrant coordinated industry response. If they don't, it means individual companies are trying to handle this quietly to avoid reputational damage. Either way tells you something valuable about how serious this threat actually is in the eyes of the people building the infrastructure. This is worth paying attention to. Hundreds of thousands of people were scammed by artificial intelligence, and Google just sued the Chinese operation that did it. The attackers used AI to generate voice clones of family members and bank officials, automating fraud at a scale that would have been impossible 5 years ago. But here's what matters: this isn't an isolated crime. It's proof that every new AI capability gets weaponized almost immediately. The real question isn't whether Google wins this lawsuit. It's whether other tech giants file similar suits in the next 90 days. If they do, AI-powered scams are systemic. If they don't, they're hiding the problem. Watch that pattern over the next month. Focus on 3 layers: immediate trigger, structural incentive shift, and downstream effects on operators, users, and regulators. Then map scenario playbooks: optimistic execution, base case adaptation, and risk case where integration friction or policy reaction slows adoption.